Well, I think we can begin session 2. Yes, wonderful. We're all here, all the speakers. I hope you enjoyed your lunch and are well rested to discuss some more about SMRs, especially the developments in our region, but also the main purpose of this panel when we have designed it was to collect point of views to see how other countries approach it in the region, but not only in the region. So we are very happy to have with us today 2 speakers from 2 embassies. We have Artem Wojtechin from the Embassy of Ukraine, and we have Natalia Petrovska from the Embassy of Poland. Also, our colleague from Romatom, Bogdan Termegan, who I invite to take a seat at the Presidium. And I propose we start with you, Artem.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank for the honor to be here, to the organizers, to every one of you here, for the possibility to bring the Ukrainian point of view on the topic of issue. And we cannot speak about the Ukrainian point of view, which would be beneficial for the SMR development in Europe, in the region overall, without the context. I have to remind you the sad fact that this forum takes place amidst ongoing large-scale war of aggression waged by Russia against Ukraine since February the 24th, 2022. This war, unprecedented in Europe in its scale and intensity since World War II, has posed extreme risks and challenges not only for Ukraine, but also for the EU, the states of the Black Sea and Central Asia and far beyond. If I would be asked to characterize this war by one word, I would name it total. That means that Russia weaponized everything and used everything in its advantage to achieve its tremendous and horrible goals. I will be talking with some of you from the media during the break, and I must repeat that I come from the town of Irpin, and I spent the winter of 2022-2023 throughout the major blackouts in the winter. Unfortunately, what we're facing now is the repetition of this situation, because Russia has been continuously and systematically destroying the power generation and the power distribution infrastructure in Ukraine. What I'm leading to, that in that winter, we understood that the resilience of a community, the survival of the people, largely depends on the decentralization of power generation and power distribution. If you put all of the stakes, everything, in large objects, these objects will be most likely destroyed by the aggressor. And when I'm talking about destroyed, I do not mean missile attacks or like physical occupation only. We are living in the time when the hybrid war is already waged across the globe. As I've been to numerous panels and forums on cybersecurity, energy generation, infrastructure is especially vulnerable to cyber attacks, because it is the largest targets. When your enemy wants to break your resilience and make you surrender, he attacks something from which the life of the civil population overall depends. Therefore, back in 2021 and back in 2020, Ukraine was very much interested in small modular reactors, and we put them on #1 priority at that time, because we understood that we direly need this energy resilience. And if there is a lesson to be learned from the Russian military aggression against Ukraine, be resilient, be armed, and the aggressor will think twice before attacking you. And in this regard, Ukraine is interested in international cooperation building the SMR, and I would like to turn your attention to the signing in April this year of an agreement between the Ukraine state nuclear energy regulator Energatom and Holtec International. The agreement involves the establishment of facilities in Ukraine for the production and manufacture of nuclear systems, structures, and components for the small modular reactors, as well as storage and transfer systems for spent nuclear fuel. It also covers other needs in the use of nuclear energy in Ukraine and other countries in the region. In plain words, we are not 100% ready to build right now and to invest like money and time resource into small modular reactors. Because I will cover it later, like right now, in the emergency situation, we have other priorities and other priority projects. At the same time, we absolutely were 100% ready and willing to be part of the European SMR infrastructure production community, like the one described in the last interaction during the first panel. And we have both the capacities, the knowledge, and the facilities for doing that. At the same time, and the long-term planning in the issue of Ukraine's infrastructure requires the continuation of usage of the already existing power reactors. And in this regard, I have to point out at the elephant in the room, the continuous occupation of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. For those of you who don't know, it is the largest nuclear plant in Europe, and it's used to produce up to 6,000 megawatts of generation. It covered almost a third of Ukraine's electricity needs. And after its occupation, it was not only tried to connect to the Crimea or other Russian occupied territories' energy infrastructure, it was used as a weapon and as a tool, not only for the putting pressure on the Ukrainian community and the Ukrainian government to comply with the ultimatum, but as a part of, and that is an interesting part nobody's thinking about, as a part of nuclear intimidation. As you know, nuclear weapons, they have two major roles, deterrence and intimidation. They tried both things on us, intimidation in the first place. Like there was a threat of nuclear strikes against Ukraine. What Ukrainians did, they made a laugh of it. It's absolutely incomprehensible to understand. You have to be inside of Ukraine at that time. But basically, we made memes. What would we do in terms of Armageddon, nuclear Armageddon? So intimidation failed. Ukrainians are difficult to be intimidated in the long run. But how it worked as a deterrence factor. And how it also worked, it worked as an instrument for informational warfare in the agenda of blurring the atrocities and the war crimes which Russia has committed against Ukraine with things that influence the informational agenda in the world more sharply. They make provocations. They've turned Zaporizhia power plant as a military base. And each time they want to turn your attention from something, they make some provocation and then accuse everyone in this world against themselves. And in this regard, I must also point out that Zaporizhia nuclear power plant has to be deoccupied, has to be demilitarized, and it has to be under the control of the International Atomic Energy Organization, the president of the IAEA spoke only a month ago. And to conclude the intervention, I would say that in the communique of the Global Peace Summit, which happened on the 14th and 15th of June this year, there is a direct demand that the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant has to be occupied, has to be freed for the safety and security of the whole region. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Artem. I would suggest now maybe you can join the panel. It will be easier to answer the questions. I think Ukraine has a unique point of view to bring to this discussion and our discussion and the discussion on SMRs, because Ukraine has recent and very how should I say it, exceptional experience with what does it mean to be blackmailed and what nuclear blackmail looks like. You have described that in your intervention. We could take a couple of reactions or comments or questions from the audience if you have at this moment. Julian Maresh, a mic over there, we need.
Considering that every state which is a nuclear power has also a nuclear diplomacy. I would like to ask Ukrainian representative if Romania had an involvement in negotiating the status of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant whatsoever.
To make sure I understood the question, if Romania offered any diplomatic help to Ukraine?
If there was any diplomatic involvement from Romania, on behalf of Romania. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I will go a little wider. The only possible peace scenario for Ukraine was formalized by President Zelensky, and it was adopted at the last year's G7 conference. And it still contains 10 points, one of the most important ones of which is nuclear safety and demilitarization of nuclear objects. Romania was one of the first countries to take active part in this point and in the point of food security and agricultural security. And they showed great resource and involvement and commitment into this process. I can only say that right now there is an UN General Assembly resolution being prepared, and Romania joined as one of the co-sponsors, co-authors of forming the text of the resolution, which is called Safety and Security of the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear Power Plant. And they are not only writing the text of the resolution, they are also pushing it forward. So we still believe that the UN Charter is the main international set of rules and laws, and the UN Charter has to be complied. Thank you.
Well, I do think that what is happening in Ukraine what has been happening for the past 2 years actually make a pretty good case for the virtue and values of the small modular reactors, because to have such a big, important industrial objective like a nuclear power plant, the biggest in Europe, being held hostage and used against you, not only against Ukrainians, but also against public opinion in Europe, who were afraid at the beginning of this war that, something might happen, actually makes a pretty good case for the usefulness of having decentralized power generation and maybe moving towards relying on smaller capacities. Do we have any other question over there?
Dan Șermănescu from RoPower. I think that this unfortunate, disastrous situation with this war at our borders and in Ukraine, from technical point of view, means the following. SMRs have special technical features able to protect them for terrorist attacks, war situations. They have to be deep in the ground. They have to be in the water. They have passive features which resist a lot of time. For instance, NuScale could resist at least 30 days without doing anything. And they have multiple uses in the sense of what they can deliver. They can deliver electricity, heat, and so on. So, from technical point of view, that would be very, very of very high interest for the future. On the other side, personally, that I will express expert point of view on nuclear safety. I think that we have at the United Nations, at IAEA, we have very good generic standards related to interference between terrorist attacks and safety, nuclear safety and safeguards. However, we don't have detailed guidelines how to implement, how to guard that. Actually, we need details about how to do it and how to monitor that. And that would be maybe a trend that United Nations and IAEA should take. Thank you.
Do you have a question for our speaker?
No,
this was more like a comment.
I just
okay, just the comment.
It's just a comment.
Would you like to add something?
Yes, thank you. So I absolutely agree with you. And to again, to prove the need and the beneficial of the small modular reactors. The problem in Ukraine right now is not even the generation capacity, because like the people are well disciplined to turn off most of the electricity, and we are very modest with our electricity demand on the level of communities and people. The point is that at the peak of consumption, you need something that would start quick, and at the lowest point of consumption, you need something that would cool off quick. And big plants are not about that. So we need right now we need what is called the balancing generation or the maneuver generation. And we are looking, and I think that SMR would do exactly that, because they are basically like 300 or 3,000 megawatts in capacity.
300, yes.
300, and they can be started quickly and turned off quickly without no threats whatsoever. But basically, yes, your idea, I've discussed it with Giuseppe Taylor before, that underground and even better underwater facilities would be even perfect. Unfortunately, we don't have the time nor the resource like to look over it.
Plus some SMR designs, if I may add, have this capacity to black start, for instance. They don't need external electricity to... exactly. If we don't have any more reactions from the audience, or we do, I propose that we go from a country that relied 50% on nuclear for electricity production, more before the war. I propose we go to a country that has currently no electricity production from nuclear, Poland, and we have here with us Natalia Petrovska, who can share with us how Poland views and approaches this topic.
Hello, it's really nice to be here with you. So it's exactly how I wanted to start, what I was saying, that comparing to Ukraine and to Romania, we are in a very different position, because Poland does not have a large-scale nuclear power plant. So we are a country which on more than 60% bases its energy mix on coal still. So is the reason for Poland, this is our utmost priority and objective, to actually construct and commission nuclear power plants. This is in plural. And they are supposed to be based on proven large-scale generation 3+ pressurized water reactors. So this is our goal and objective. And right now we are in the process of preparing for our first nuclear power plant. This we will be doing with a partner from the United States, which is the Westinghouse House Electric CO. And we are planning to build 3 AP1000 reactors, which will be in a communal part of Poland, which is called Pomerania. It is very north of Poland, close to the Baltic Sea. So basically less than 2 months ago, we started in-depth geological research. And the timeline for that is 2028 to start the first concrete pouring for the nuclear power plant. 2035 is the completion of the first unit. 2036 is the commissioning of the first unit. And between 2039 2040 is finalizing the project, so having all 3 units in place. So this is for us at this point our main priority. So you can see how different this is from Romania and from Ukraine, but maybe a little bit of history. We were working in 1980s on nuclear power plant, but the high time for that came during Chernobyl. So after that, those plans had to be put to the very, very, very dark corner. And right now, since for quite a few years, we have been working on it. And of course, the war in Ukraine also all the full-scale invasion of Russia on Ukraine, to be more precise, showed us how much we need to be self-sufficient when it comes to energy. And it's the reason this is our priority. We are also working on having a second nuclear power plant, but this is just on the stage of discussion. So we are discussing with the United States, with France, and with Korea. But this is a very, very far plan as such. But something which might be interesting for you is that we are also having an initiative for the third nuclear power plant, but this is a private initiative. So there is a private entity called ZE-PAK, so in Polish, which is Płotnów Adamów Konin S.A. Power Plant Complex, very complicated Polish name. So basically they had a coal mine there. So they want to use what they already have had, and they want to build their nuclear power plant. They are cooperating with Korea on that. And just to be very clear, although this is a private initiative, it is fully supported by the government. So in 2022 in Seoul, there was a letter of intent signed between the Polish ZE-PAK company, Korean KHNP, and with the support of the Polish Energy Group. But at the same time, there was a letter of intent signed between Poland and Korea that we support this project. So where is the place for SMR in that? So very clearly, as I've underlined, the objective and priority of Poland are large-scale reactors. Polish government as such sees SMR as a complementary project to the large-scale reactors. However, this is not our priority as such. We have seen that there is interest in companies in Poland in SMR, and Polish government is fully supporting this process. We are supporting the SMR technology, especially when it comes to the industrial heating, direct heating, and hydrogen production. But as such, to be clear, this is in the hands of those companies which are interested in that technology. So in order to be able to have this technology in Poland, we need to get so-called basic decision of the government, which basically says that having this SMR works within the overall policy of the government and within the energy policy of Poland. And as such, until today, there were 3 companies which were able to receive this basic decision. So we have Orlen Synthos Green Energy, which is cooperating with General Electric's HHI. There is KGHM in cooperation with American NuScale, very well known in Romania. And we have now, once again, a very complicated Polish name, Świętokrzyska Grupa Przemysłowa Industria. So for you, just the last part, because in the international market, they're using Industria but this is actually the full name of the company, which is a part of the Industrial Development Agency. So those 3 companies were able to get this basic administrative decision. However, at this point, the most developed is the work of Orlen Synthos Green Energy with HHI. So in less than a week, on July 1st, they will start the environmental tests because they actually already have the location for the SMR, which is Stawy Monowskie. So while we were in the very north of Poland for large-scale nuclear power plant, we have to go exactly to the end of Poland, to the south. And it's basically the straight line between the two, but on very end of Poland. And after that, the works on a preliminary safety analysis report will start. When it comes to KGHM, which is working with NuScale, they were working very much on this project, but in last few weeks, the president of the company decided that while he still believes in the SMR technology, at this point he sees the project as too expensive, underdeveloped, and not competitive. However, he does not say that they will not be interested in the future, but at this part they are not seeing this project as viable. So basically what we can take from Poland is that we need, first of all, to have large-scale nuclear power plant, then to think about small modular reactors. We are supporting it, but this is not the priority of our government because we still have to have the big one. Thank you.
Thank you very much for providing this overview of how the Polish government sees this topic. Do we have any questions from the audience? Mr. Kirika.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question regarding the supply chain. And I know that Poland is an industrialized country, and I'm sure that the private sector is very strong there. So if there is a case of one business, which is very important, have problems, does the state intervene to help that company?
Yes, we did have that during COVID. We did have that since the outbreak of war. So yes, the state is trying, especially in those special circumstances like pandemics and the full-scale invasion. Yes, the Polish government prepares plans in that context to help the companies in need.
Thank you very much for your answer.
I have a quick comment related to what you have presented to us. Reading how the expert community in Poland sees the topic of SMRs, generally the view is that they will develop after 2035, so mid 2030s. But they are viewed as a serious a solution for decarbonizing district heating. And it is impressive because if you look at the number of announced projects, including by Orlos, so we are talking about some 70 reactors that are being planned, and some neighboring countries are even afraid. And I'm thinking about Czech Republic, that if Poland goes ahead with all its SMR plans, there will be it will be difficult for other countries that want to pursue such projects because of the availability of technology. If everything goes to Poland and this boom actually materializes.
I agree with it, but we still have some time. Like we are talking more than 10 years from today, which is a very long time. And as we can see, those priorities also sometimes change, like with KGHM, so one of the one that is cooperating with NewScale, because at the beginning we were thinking that this was actually the company which will be the first one to bring SMRs to Poland. However, now it's changed a little bit. But the plans are there, and there is a support of government for that. But also, like there is a very big part where the companies have to do it on their own. So this is also like both an incentive, but not so, because like the government itself is focused on other priorities.
Sure.
Yes, I can't just walk by your remark. It is my personal opinion, but I think most Ukrainians share it, that we should not be afraid of the development of neighboring countries in the European Union. There should be no competition in the sphere of electrical energy overall. Let me remind you that a couple of days after the large war, as we call it, Ukraine and the Republic of Moldova made a leap of faith and joined the NTOCE, changing the frequency of the electricity, as therefore discerning from the old Soviet standards and the market. And therefore, like if somebody builds SMRs first, good. If somebody builds anything else first, excellent. Like technology will flow and the energy market will benefit from different options. We've been living in this paradigm when we had one single, let's not talk about energy, let's talk about like natural gas and oil. We had only one single supplier who basically monopolized the Ukrainian internal market and used it as a leverage. So we struggled for like 10 years from 2004 to 2014 to rip ourselves away and to diversify the supplies of different types of energy. Even if it is costly, yes, even if it is like not beneficial for you at this moment, you always have this energy independence. So that's my point. We should not compete in this sphere because like Europe will benefit overall as a magnet for invention and new technologies.
According to a survey from 2023, right now, 90% of Polish people support development of nuclear energy, including SMR technology. And this is the highest number since 2012. And for the first time we had this survey. So we have 90%, 2023, after Russia full-scale invasion on Ukraine, after all the problems that we also have seen there, but we have now the highest highest support for building a nuclear power plant in Poland.
The support of the public opinion of the general population is really high in Poland. Do we have any comments, reactions?
I have one more question.
All right.
I very much like to understand the full picture of things. So looking at Poland, I think you have north of 20 gigawatts of coal power, I think. And I'm just trying to understand by 2040, 2050, when I would imagine you have to phase out coal, what will come into place to replace that coal capacity? So you've told us about 3 large plants, right? Mm-hmm. One of them has 3 APR 1000, so that's 3.3 gigawatts. What are the capacities being discussed on the other ones?
So
what's the plan, basically?
For the nuclear power plants, which are built by the government, so the part of the government program, which are 2 that we are now discussing, it's 6 to 9.
Okay.
So this is so probably half for the first one, half for the second one. But also there we are also working about natural and etc. etc. So this is not the only idea we have, but like discuss and put in the document it's 6 to 9 from nuclear power plants, large scale, not the SMR.
Okay. So you will have gas as well?
Yes.
Okay.
We have the gas terminals. We also do have gas terminals. We are building them as well in the north of Poland.
Świnoujście.
Okay, thank you. That's good info because they have a lot of gas as well. So it's good to know how that change will occur. Thank you.
If we don't have, we have one more question in the back for Mr. Șerbanescu.
Suggestion based on what Mr. Wojtykin said. Reality is that there is an extremely tough competition between new SMRs. That's reality. This initiative at European level tries somehow to keep that under control. I'm not sure they will be successful. This is personal, so far, opinion. What I think that will be much more successful is to have a regional alliance on SMR development. And I mean Eastern European countries.
That's an interesting idea, but I think this is what Europe is trying actually to do with what Mr. Andrei Goicea presented in the last speaker in the first panel, to create a European level alliance of SMRs. So we don't just end up importing technology developed by other countries outside Europe, but also base some of that manufacturing equipment and maybe IP, intellectual property rights, also here in Europe. So the benefits accrue also economically to European countries. So, but you go further than that and you propose like a Eastern European alliance. I retained your idea and the difference in it. Do we have any other willing participants to chip in with comments? If no, then I will call upon myself to show you, yes, I will moderate myself to show you a couple of slides that we have prepared on behalf of ROEC for today's event. And I will also try to observe the time, or as one, I count on you to signal me if I go overboard. So what we at ROEC are doing, we're trying to map out this SMR ecosystem, this nascent SMR ecosystem. We're trying to understand who is doing what. And as I was saying this morning, there are many angles to look at SMRs, through engineering lenses, through commercial, economic lenses, through technology lenses. So everyone looks at it, but through a different angle. However, in my presentation today, in the slides that I have prepared, I will present some sort of a framework that I hope, will be helpful for those especially who are at their first contact with this topic. So not because we have people with different backgrounds in the room. Some know, some are nuclear engineers and know a lot about this topic. Others less so. So we have mapped out at this point, in fact, the International Atomic Energy Agency has mapped out 83 SMR designs. In terms of proposals, there are more. There are maybe over 100 such proposals, but these are, let's say, the ones considered more advanced. And it's interesting that they are grouped in several categories. So there are 83 in total, but 25 are based, so the technology matters. How do you cool the reactor? So for me, personally, this was important to understand that some reactors are cooled, like water-cooled, water-cooled based reactors. Of these can be for land use, so land-based, or can be, for marine-based. So for what we were talking this morning, the propulsion systems for submarines or for aircraft carriers. So they come from that branch of experience with this. Then there are about 17 high-temperature gas coolers. So cooling is done with, so not water, right? The same goes for the liquid metal cooled fast neutron spectrum. Mr. Konstantin has touched a little bit upon that this morning. So there, the reactor is not cooled with water. In the case of high-temperature gas-cooled gas, so they use gases, for instance, helium. They cool it through liquid metal in this other case. So these are the big categories in which cooled with water and then non-water. And then there are also the molten salt ones. And then there are also some 12 microreactors which can use technology water-based for cooling or, non-water-based. So you can have a microreactor that uses some other type of cooling. Which is what is called generation 4. A little bit through the content that I will run. SMR designs, reactor types, the size, some old versus new uses, and some of the countries that have already done it. For instance, if we're talking about SMRs, there are only 2 SMRs in the world that are commercially operational. And that belongs to China, and the other one belongs to Russia. The United States has somewhat, is a little bit behind in this race in the sense that they have ceded some of this ground to the to the other 2 countries, China and Russia, which developed this technology with the help of, let's say, state-owned companies. So the United States is trying to catch up on this development and is investing and supporting the development of new, especially they say, advanced nuclear technology. Then I will tell you a little bit about Canada, a little bit about Czech Republic's approach, and I grouped them there because I will talk more high level, because these 2 countries have SMR roadmaps, both Canada and the Czech Republic. So they have a specific policy document on how they want to deploy and how they want to go about SMRs. A little bit about France and its most advanced reactor developed by Électricité de France, and a little bit about what the UK is doing. So this is what I will talk about. So water cooled versus liquid cooled versus, but they all fall, we talk about generation 3 are the water cooled ones versus the generation 4 that are non-water cooled ones. Basically generation 3 or 3 plus are the ones that are light water reactors. They can be pressure reactors, so PVRs, pressurized water reactors, or they can be BVRs, boiling water reactors. Generation 4, when you hear about molten salt reactors, metal-cooled reactors like the lead one that was presented, Project Alfred, that's generation 4. Or the sodium-cooled, or you will hear natrium-cooled, because natrium is the same thing. Natrium is the Latin name. For instance, the SMR developed by TerraPower, which is, I call it also the Bill Gates SMR, because that's his company. So that's generation 4 versus generation 3, where there is a lot of experience based on the large conventional nuclear power plants. Size matters. And if you look at the definition used by International Atomic Energy Agency, the World Nuclear Association, or the US Nuclear Energy Institute, they say SMR is a reactor with a capacity of 300 megawatts or less. But there are exceptions to this one, to this definition. And the exception is the Rolls-Royce SMR, which exceeds the 300. It's 470 megawatts capacity, but it's still considered a small modular reactor, or this TerraPower SMR, the Bill Gates SMR, which is also over 300, so it's 345 megawatts, electric megawatts, or megawatts of electricity. Then there is this category of what do we consider micro reactors? Designs with a unit capacity of less than 10 megawatts, so more than 1 megawatt, but less than 10 megawatts. But I have seen also some people include in this category reactors with a capacity of up to 20 or 30. Some also consider these are micro reactors. These are more mobile than the larger SMRs. They typically are not based on the light water technology, but on the more advanced ones typically. So they include generation 4 technologies and have a wide range of technological approaches, but mostly are in the early design stages, with the exception of this project, US Aurora, which has almost 2 megawatts electric, and it builds on the prototypes that come from the US space program, for instance, Aurora. Next one. If we talk about the different uses, the old use, we use nuclear to generate electricity, and as we were saying in the morning, for marine propulsion. So these are the old uses. What are the new uses? We talk about using nuclear produced electricity to desalinate seawater, or to produce hydrogen, or to co-generate electricity plus heat. For instance, Poland was interested specifically in this function, electricity, but specifically heat generation. So these are the new uses. Here is a slide about with some details about the China's operational SMR. They call it HTRPM, high temperature gas cooled modular pebble bed reactor, first of a kind. Because again, when we are talking about Deutsche, this too is supposed to be a first of a kind. So Deutsche, the new scale, the Voyager. First commercially operational modular NPP with 4th generation technology. Now you know what 4th generation means. So it's a demonstration power plant. It was connected to the grid in December 2021, commercial operation December 2023. So it's not been in, let's say, commercial operation for that long. It's still the beginning of this. It has 2 units of 210 megawatts electric, and this is megawatts thermal. Yeah, so electric each. Uses uranium enriched up to 8.5%. Fuel loading is done through these pebbles, like spherical elements, which have the size of a tennis ball and contain about 7 grams of enriched uranium. This is important, enriched to 8.5%, because the conventional nuclear power plants use uranium, so for the light water ones, right? So the ones whose reactor is cooled with the help of water, they use uranium enriched up to 5%, slowly below 5%. Here you see, so generation 4, this Chinese SMR uses uranium enriched up to 8.5. The background, so it took a long way for the Chinese to get to the point of December to 2021 and to operational capacity December 23. They started in the early 90s with a research reactor located at one of their universities. They conducted some tests. It was the initial version HTR-10. And then they started work on this HTR-PM in 2012. So almost 30 years to get to the point of having a commercially operational SMR. And 2021, they achieved first criticality. That means the nuclear reaction is self-sustainable. Russia's SMR. But again, this is not the only one. Aside from the SMR that is functional, China also has other SMRs in development, with some of them based on, water technology, so water cooled. And they have planned dates of operation 2026, 2027, 2028. But because these are based on technology that we know a lot about, so reactors cooled with the help of water. Russia's SMR. This is what you see here is Academic Lomonosov. Which is, they say it's the world's first floating nuclear power plant. Started commercial operation in 2020, has this type of reactor, pressurized water reactor, PVR, which builds on their knowledge of nuclear-powered icebreakers and the reactors used for their nuclear-powered icebreakers fleet. It has a capacity of 2 units, 30 megawatts electric each. Uranium dioxide, this is what they use, pellets, fuel enrichment of 18.6. Yeah, so much more than the conventional big nuclear power plants. And the fact that the fuel is enriched up to 18.6% actually gives them a longer refueling cycle. If you talk about the low enriched uranium, that gives you a refueling cycle of 1 year, 1 year and a half, 2 years. But because it's enriched up to 18.6, you can extract, you can last for longer. Yeah. Design life 40 years. Again, long road for the Russians as well. They started in 98. You remember it was a difficult period for Russia economically. Then they revived the project in 2006. Oil prices were going up. So it was a good time to devote attention also to the nuclear projects. So they selected then Pevek Chukotka in the Far East as the site for the final destination. They start building it in the Baltic factory, Baltijski Zavod. Start testing and commission the first floating power unit, which is finalized in 2017. Then 2018, they tow this vessel for about 4,000 kilometers around Finland and Sweden to Murmansk, where they load the fuel, achieve criticality in November 2018. And then in 2019, they complete the second leg of the journey, another almost 5,000 kilometers to the Arctic port of Pevek, where it's connected to the grid in December. So 2020, fully commissioned in May, and now supplies the heat to the town of Pevek and electricity to the regional Chaun-Bilbino power system. So this is the Russian and the Chinese SMRs that are the only ones in the world currently operationally, in commercial operation. United States, but again, going back to the Russians. So this is what is commercially operation. The Russians have about 5 or 6 designs, water-cooled reactor, marine-based. So they focus the new designs of SMRs, and they base it on their marine experience. So what the reactors they have built for the marine propulsion. But most of them based on light water technology. So reactor based on water cooling. United States, we have about 22 more advanced SMR designs, and now you know what. No. Now you know what water-cooled means, right? That's third generation 3+, land-based. Voyager, this one, yeah. This is exactly how it looks, NuScale, developed by NuScale. BVR X300, developed by Hitachi and, GE, General Electric and Hitachi, so American-Japanese cooperation. Boiling water reaction, they say generation X comes from 10th generation, 300. Then you have Holtec, Westinghouse, SMR. Then you have some other, but this is technology that is based on water-cooled, so land-based. I haven't been able to identify any SMR that's water-cooled but marine-based, for instance. Maybe it exists, but we haven't come across it. Then high-temperature gas-cooled ones. This is the most, let's say, famous and receives more press recently. Then we have the liquid metal-cooled ones, including the one from TerraPower. Then the molten salt ones, developed by this company. So in the parentheses, you have the company. And some microreactors, the Aurora one, which is, again, in pre-licensing phase. What I want to say here is that probably the Voyager and NuScale's technology has received a lot of press coverage and attention from the press. Then we know, and the press covers a lot, this natrium reactor, which is developed by TerraPower, so Bill Gates, but it's not only Bill Gates, because you have Bechtel, who is the EPC contractor, engineering procurement construction contractor for this project. You have Berkshire Hathaway, which is one of the investors, and if this natrium or sodium reactor proves feasible, they want to deploy 5 more in US alone, pretty fast. Actually, in terms of this Bill Gates natrium sodium reactor, TerraPower's SMR, they broke new ground 2 weeks ago. They started the construction and working on the construction side, but the non-nuclear side, because they will have to wait for approval from the regulator, for the American regulator, to start working on the nuclear part of the SMR. And their reactor is interesting because it has, it has 345 megawatts of electricity output capacity, but because they combine it with a molten salt storage system, they can push the electricity production to 500 megawatts. One other thing that I found interesting about the small modular reactors is their function, for instance, to load follow. I think it was mentioned in the first panel as well. That means to moderate the electricity output so that you achieve integration of nuclear power production with renewables. And this is something that including Voyager, so NuScale, provides in its technical specifications. They say that this reactor is capable to follow the load. Next, Canada. Canada has had this unique approach to creating and to develop an SMR roadmap. They started in 2017. They had about 10 months of consultations. They engaged with all the stakeholders. And from that consultation, 10 months long, this roadmap is the result. And then they added an SMR action plan, and they have progress reports every 2 years in which they say, they see who was supposed to do what and what was done. They actually have 3 tracks, and they have looked and have done literature review for about 100 projects, and then they have narrowed it down to 6. 2 SMRs per each track, because they said we in Canada can use SMRs for on-grid power generation to phase out coal, so practically to replace with SMRs coal-fired power plants that we have to decommission. And here, this is the average size they're looking at, 340 megawatts, let's say, on average. And they have identified opportunities, 29 units located at 17 facilities. The other track is on and off-grid cogeneration for heavy industry, specifically for oil sands producers and remote mines that could benefit from heat and power generation. Why? For instance, oil sands producers in Canada use the SAGD technology. That's acronym for steam-assisted. The other 2 I can't remember, but they basically inject steam in the oil sands, which are heavily bituminous, and they lower the viscosity and are able to extract with the use of steam that they pump into the oil sands and into the reservoirs. They are able to extract oil. So that's why oil sands producers use a lot of heat, industrial heat, for oil production, because these are heavily to extract heavy resources. So they think that they can use small 20, 50 megawatts electric or medium size megawatts for this need of theirs. And they already have identified oil sands production sites, 96 facilities, heavy industry sites, 85, off-rig mines, 24. So very methodical in their approach. They go directly with the end use, and they want to engage the customers, the end customers. So then we have the third track, off-grid power district. DH comes from district heating, destermoficare. Desalination. This use, they are looking at it for remote communities, which use a lot of diesel right now, and heating oil, which is polluting, of course, and they would like to replace that. So for this need, they need microreactors that produce more than 1 megawatt. So that's why microreactors for the northern indigenous communities, and they have identified 79 such communities. Our friends in Central and Eastern Europe, Czech Republic, has published an SMR roadmap in November 2023, so a couple of months ago, so it's fresh from the oven. What they say, because this is extracted from this strategy, they say that they prefer to go with a light water SMR because it's a priority from a legal perspective. Why? Because they already have developed the regulatory framework for light water reactors, for the big power plants. So, for the SMRs, probably some regulatory adjustment amendments still need to be done. So they prefer to rely on the regulatory framework that regulates light water reactors already. So this is the companies that they are looking at. Again, NuScale, our Voyager, Holtec International American, the American-Japanese cooperation, EDF France, which develops this reactor together with their Atomic Commission, Naval Group and these other companies, Tractebel Engineering. And then they look at the Rolls-Royce SMR, which is also called the UK SMR. So when you hear UK SMR, that's Rolls-Royce. And then another one from Korea. I have extracted some technical details that I found interesting for me, but of course there are many more. They have all these technical files and specifications. But again, you see light water, yeah, refrigerant, moderate, light water, all of them, because for them, light water reactors are a priority. Fuel enrichment, again, less than 5%, 4%, 3.5, less than 5, yeah. So low enriched uranium. Fuel change cycle, and this is related, remember, with the Russian reactor, I was saying it's up to 18% and 36 months. Well, you have low enriched uranium, you can get a year and a half or 2 years. Yeah, 1 year, 2 years at most. Service life, long service life for SMRs. And this is one of their advantages, and I don't think we talk enough about how long these reactors can last. Because if we compare them with how long, let's say, wind power plant or solar power plant, the lifetime, up to about 20 years. Look, 60 years. You can get 60 years of lifetime, 80 years. Yeah, this is what the producers are saying. Scenarios. The Czech Republic has discussed what to do. Scenario 1, they say, we purchase something done outside Czech Republic. But so no involvement from the Czech industry. Scenario 2, we'll produce something in Czech Republic. We want to supply some parts of the equipment. Scenario 3, we want to develop a Czech SMR, our national design. This would be easiest because you don't have to worry. Someone else takes care of the manufacturing and licensing. This haven't come up, and the discussions with them, let's say, international manufacturers didn't lead to any materialization of this building part of SMRs in the Czech Republic by Czech manufacturers so far. So, and this would take a very long time because these are generation 3 SMRs in Czech Republic, yeah? Small ones, you see, megawatts electric, less than 50. So generation 3, water cooled, yeah? Generation 4, I can't give you more details about each one of them. All I know is that they're in very early stages of development. And if you want to deploy generation 3, you can do this faster because it's light water technology. A lot of knowledge, expertise exists in this area. So this can be deployed in the 2030s, right? If you want an SMR generation 4, Czech Republic says in its strategy, we're looking probably at 2040. They have evaluated some potential sites, including siting this at existing nuclear power plants, because then you have already all the regulatory permitting under authorization work already is done for the big nuclear power plants. So some of them, some countries think, including Czech Republic, to site them where the big NPPs are already present. It simplifies the work. Next one. This slide is just, I wanted to present you a little bit about the French SMR, new word it's called. Again, water-cooled, land-based, right? So generation 3+. These are the developers, coolant, light water, 2 units, 170 megawatts electric. So the entire thing would be 340. They use uranium oxide fuel enrichment, again, less than 5%. Storage capacity of spent fuel. So this I extracted from the technical presentation of this new word SMR. What they want to use it to replace fossil fuels for remote municipalities, for energy-intensive industrial sites. So it resembles what the Canadians have listed in terms of new application potential. Again, when you look and when we talk about these SMRs, another word jumps. Multi-purpose SMRs. So we don't talk only about electricity production. We talk about heat production, district heating, water desalination, hydrogen production. So multi-purpose SMRs. Again, base load and load following capability. So they can supply in base load or they can follow the load. I think this is an extraordinary feature, and I think we should stress it more in our public discussion. It would be located below ground, semi-buried, for instance. Here is a manufacturer that designed it with this in mind from the very beginning. Licensing status, pre-licensing. first of a kind would be built in France, and the French government already agreed to this, and they would like to start building it by 2030. Of course, they received funding through some government plans, France's reindustrialization plan, some EU money recently. They also received a grant. But this one, at least the way I perceive it, is much more behind in terms of on the TRL scale than NuScale. NuScale and Voyager, this one, is TRL 8. So the only thing that the Voyager NuScale is missing is the first of a kind plant. Here, the French are still in the basic design phase, 2023, 2026. So they are behind the American model. And a few words, and this is my last slide, about the United Kingdom. They have a civil nuclear roadmap published earlier this year in February or March, in which they say that they want to reach 1/4 of energy from nuclear by 2050. They have this great British nuclear government body that is responsible to deliver this nuclear renaissance. So it's responsible for as in Poland's case, with delivering the big power plants as well as the SMRs. And they are, as also Jacep mentioned it in the first panel, in the middle of the selection process. So right now, they haven't decided yet. So they launched in April last year a competitive process to select SMR technologies to see which one, is better placed to be operational by mid-2030s. And they want to select 2 such SMR projects for a final investment decision by 2029. They invited in October of last year 6 companies to tender: EDF Energy, so you saw the new word, reactor model, then GE Hitachi Nuclear, then Holtec, Britain, NuScale, again we see NuScale, so Voyager, this one, Rolls-Royce SMR, the UK SMR, and Westinghouse Electric UK Limited. June, actually, was the deadline, and is the deadline, to submit tender responses, and then they'll go into assessment by this body and negotiation, and then they submit again final tenders, and later this year they will announce who the successful bidders are, who of these 6, who will be the 2 selected for progress. So this is part of the framework that I have built because it helped me to understand better and equipped me with the tools to how to navigate and then to understand the whole discussion about SMRs. What's generation 3 versus generation 4? What's water cooled versus cooled through liquid metal or sodium, like Bill Gates SMR. Thank you for your attention. I think I went overboard. Well, if you have any reactions to what I have just presented.
I wanted to ask you, which type of SMR do you think that has the most chances to become reality, except the other 2 in China and Russia, from the new companies?
Well, here's the thing, and this question was answered by Mr. Șerbanescu's comment previously when he said that the race is now. This thing is real. It's happening right now. And my sense, looking at all these SMR types and how countries approach this, is that if you want to have an SMR faster, then you choose a water-based technology where you have a lot of previous experience from the big nuclear power plants, and you have manufacturers that build on that experience. For instance, the GE Hitachi SMR model, they say that this is their simplest design of a reactor. For instance, Westinghouse says that, and these reactors, these small modular reactors, they apply passive safety systems, because after Fukushima, we all saw what happened. The industry took this very seriously, and they upgraded all the safety specifications in the big nuclear power plants, but also they applied them to the small modular reactors. So one thing that must be said, and I think is not well understood at the level of the public opinion, is that when we talk about SMRs with passive safety systems, for instance, the Rolls-Royce SMR, they have active and passive safety features. This NuScale SMR, this one, passive safety features only. What does this mean? This means that, and I found this very interesting when I looked at the technical file, is that they say that in case the electricity to this reactor is interrupted, it can function without without electrical power delivered through AC or DC current. So the French one can work for 3 days, right, before if something happens, in case of a catastrophe or in case of a natural disaster. This one works forever. I mean, it cools, we were talking yesterday with Bogdan, natural circulation, right? And that's why I asked the question of Mr. Constantin, I don't know if he's still here in the room, what is integral PVR in the panel, in the first panel? And he said integral PVR is that this is integral, it can function without pumps, you see? So if something happens, a natural hazard or something, it cools down on its own. And it's cooled through the action of water. So there are this, or what does it mean? It means that to shut it down, you don't need to send a human, like in Fukushima, for people to expose to radiation. It shuts down using natural forces. So these things were added and thought of and innovated. Many of them came after Fukushima as a result of Fukushima. So that's passive safety systems. But I think Bogdan is better placed than me to address and to explain what the passive safety systems are. So to answer your question, we don't know. It's as Jacob said, because the race is now. And you have these manufacturers, you have this term, remember, technology readiness level, because TRL1 is fundamental research. It's in the lab. TRL9, and with all the intermediate steps, TRL9 is when you have a demonstration reactor operational. That's TRL9. NuScale is TRL8, because they don't have the demonstration power plant, SMR plant, right? New World will be also in France, when it will be built in France, it will be first of a kind. The first of a kind are the most difficult ones because all the difficulties appear for the pioneer, right? For the one who does this for the first time. So that's why it's difficult for me to say. It looked like NuScale would be the winner, right? Until the project in the United States was canceled last fall. And now, because the United States has this advanced nuclear reactor demonstration program, and they have selected two such projects. So they selected the TerraPower, Bill Gates, SMR, and they selected this one. These two are the ones, X Energy, yeah, and this one, Natrium Reactor, TerraPower, Bill Gates. These are the two reactor designs that are supported currently by through this program of the Department of Energy in the United States. And they seem to be, especially this one from TerraPower, since they started work on the non-nuclear side of the reactor 2 weeks ago, they seem to be better positioned because the US government said, okay, we will, sure, initial funding was provided. The other reactors are supported because they are on lower TRL, on the TRL scale, they are lower. So they receive some millions in funding to develop the design, the concepts. But to build, if you want to get to TRL 9 and then to build the nth, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, such power plant, SMR, they forge industrial partnerships. So the US government with the industry. My understanding is on 50-50 basis. So if, for instance, the TerraPower can muster and raise some $2 billion, the US government also can match that and put $2 billion for this natrium TerraPower sodium reactor. Yeah? So now it looks like this one is the front runner. Which one will be in the end? We thought it is NuScale. We'll see. Radu?
Hello. So my question would be, how financially viable are SMRs? Because we didn't touch this topic, and I think this is the most important risk, not security risks.
I'll touch that.
Financial viability. Because the most recent study on that I read was unfortunately from last year, and they used the Monte Carlo simulation, and they said the prices of energy are not competitive. But of course, there are, on the other hand, externalities like grid balancing and stuff like that. So maybe they are financially viable. So from your research, are they competitive or not? Thank you.
When we're talking about SMRs, because when we have large conventional nuclear power plants, we have economies of scale. Yeah, so if the cost is cheaper when the plant is bigger, but with the SMRs, we're talking about a shift in paradigm. So we are moving from economies of scale to economies of serial production. The proof is in the pudding. So the more such SMRs will be built, because we're talking about serial production, the more costs will go down. But yes, for the first of a kind, for the first one, that is the demonstration that, look, it works. Yes, costs can be and normally are higher than for all the others that follow. So it's a race also, and that's why you have countries like Canada that say, okay, for us to make this economical, we must have a fleet-based approach. So we do not have to build one, we need to start thinking about building several in order to contribute to bringing costs down. But, and I here want to make an argument for Romania for building this SMR, because it's interesting. People have pushed it aside, the initial reaction, and said, no, this is experimental. No, if you look at the underlying technology, in fact, the technology is the conventional one, light water cooled reactor, right? So it's not experimental in the sense, fourth generation experimental technology. So from this point of view, I think it's the safest option to go with a third generation technology than to go with a fourth generation technology, which is not as tested. We don't have that much experience. But why it is important and what benefits can a country have if you build a first of a kind reactor in that country? You prove that it works, and you can start building research infrastructure around it. People come, to the simulator at Polytechnica, they learn, jobs are being created, other research is conducted, intellectual property that you can somehow monetize later. So for instance, Canada, and it's very interesting, and we have 2 more presentations on Canada. They have, and I have, including in their roadmap on SMR strategy, they say, we want to be first movers, because they understand that, sure, you can sit this one out and others can build first of a kind reactors, but then you miss out on the economic opportunities that come from that. And then, the market share, the global market share, especially for vendors, will be occupied by other countries and by other vendors, the Russians, the Chinese. So in a way, the United States, putting this much money and power behind this advanced nuclear, is trying to catch up on territory that it has lost in the past 20, 30, 40 years. Yeah, and this is what it's trying to do with this nuclear demonstrator program, and putting financial weight behind this new technology. So Canadians say, we want to be first movers. The French the same. We will be able to sell our technology if we demonstrate it, let's say, in France, and people see that it works. So there are advantages to being first movers, including for Romania, because if we want to go with the domestically produced reactor, sure, we can opt for that, but that will take longer, as we have seen in the Czech strategy. They know from the very beginning that if they want fast, they will have to import it. If they want some domestic SMR model, it will, happen more likely in the 2040s.
Yeah, there are a series of information on Energy Information Agency in the United States, which I think that's the 3rd year they are informing people, US citizens, that we shouldn't judge the cost on SMRs based on LCOE, levelized cost of energy, but based on levelized avoided cost of energy, which means that we are performing an unfair comparison between plants which already operated, they have a certain life cycle, everything.
France doesn't have one. They plan to.
When we are comparing the life cycle of the old big plants with these new ones, we are unfair if we do that. And they say we should compare the performances of these SMRs with new technologies like renewables. And they present a series of calculations which show that they are comparable, and in some types of SMRs, they are even lower than the cost for these renewables. That's one thing I wanted to bring as an information to you, that LCOE might not be the best criterion to judge. Yeah, yes, and we do work on that. So in our evaluations, we also in our feasibility studies and so on, we also consider this aspect, the fact that LCOE is not the criterion to judge. Then, in addition to that, one piece of information for the Romanian public and for non-Romanian public. In Bucharest, in the first phase, we are going to have a nuclear power plant. I think we are working on it. We don't have only that. We already have 80 megawatts of photovoltaic. We have under construction 30 megawatts of batteries. And we have the plans to transform the site into energy portal site. So, and we also are working with the surrounding industries to have an industrial portal. So the plans are much more elaborated and well-founded than before. In order to reach those achievements, we have to review the business case we have, so that to consider to have clusters on research and design, hopefully on Eastern Europe, clusters on manufacturing and repair, and clusters on operation. So one operator qualified for light water reactor is equally qualified for SMR, water reactor. We went to this point to have first a water SMR because of this reason. And we actually did have various interfaces and communications on webinars and other IAA conferences when we mentioned that 4 years ago, not now. So that if you really want to build an SMR, start with a water reactor. Now, an attempt to answer another question from the lady from the press. There are two categories, water and non-water. I would like to give you a piece of information from professional side. The non-water things are not made of plastiline. They are made of some metals which are not qualified yet. So the ASME requirements for non-water components in nuclear vessels are not yet approved. We are talking about demonstration things. In comparison with the water SMRs, they are not yet approved. And that is, to make it even more obvious, nuclear power plant is not core technology. There are several technologies. It's a metal fabrication technology, inspection technology, INC technology, control room technology, man-machine interface technology. So only water SMRs are now in a situation to be the first. That's to make things very clear.
I agree with you.
Which of them is not yet
100%. And I think this was not made clear enough in the public discussion that we have had in Romania. I mean, people didn't understand that. Myself, until I didn't look at it, I didn't understand the difference. The third generation water-cooled ones are actually the safer ones because they built on decades of previous experience. Yeah. Should we pass the floor over to you?
Hello. Well, if you've liked the subject, we're going to have a little bit more of that because we will discuss about how the SMRs are doing in Europe and how economically feasible they are. First of all, I would like to thank Artem for clarifying that we need them and that they present very useful features on a strategy or planning level should times go sour. So that was one very good point. And then we'll discuss how market sizes are important. But let's make some steady progress. Just a second. Okay. Now, Gina covered the basics, so I'll go quickly through this one. in terms of what an SMR is, you've already seen that it's at about 300 megawatts with a few exceptions. The whole point of it, and this is going to be important later, is that much of what makes an SMR can be made in a plant, in a factory, and you deliver it on site, which means that you can make many of them, you discount the costs, and that's what lowers your cost. You can have some flexibility in terms of the fact that, well, them being smaller, you can reach what you need by installing more of them. NuScale, of course, provides one further degree of flexibility, which means that you can actually add reactors in your plant for 6 or 12. Of course, currently we're only discussing about the plants of 6. But if they win the race further down the line, it's going to be more. And as Gina already pointed out, the game with SMRs is slightly different than the game for large plants. So to take costs down on a large plant, you make it bigger and bigger. With SMRs, you make more and more of them. In terms of measuring, yeah, so we want to know who wins the race, right? Now, for that, the NEA came out with a report earlier this year, and they measured the number of KPIs, which you can see here. And I've made a table for that, so we can look together and draw some conclusions. I've already mentioned that part. I wanted to bring out the market as well. So yes, of course, we have many players in the market. It is only natural by selection. Some will be winners and some will not be at all, probably. So that's a natural thing that happens in capitalism. We spoke about this with the American representatives in Washington last year, and they acknowledged that. So it's a race, and it's natural to be that way, because that's how the most efficient player wins. Now, assuming you pass the market step, how do you finance? The project is the next step. And this is, I believe, a point where the contribution that Natalia made is quite important as well. So if you've noticed the Polish position, the state is directly involved in the very large ones. And while I'm not entirely sure the public sector is taking the whole lead on the SMRs, it certainly seems like the state is taking a step back. So that might be probably because of the fact that the payback period and high initial costs are not as high, or shouldn't be as high as for a large power plant. So it's a level down from that. Now, assuming you fixed this problem as well, and we'll go into details about this, you need a supply chain that's capable to deliver at scale. So you need the large volumes to get the costs down, but you need the large plants to do that in a timely fashion. Now, this is where we try to get a little bit more specific. So, okay, we have a new design. We want to build one, and if we get a cost estimate, that's really what everyone will be interested in. If we only want to make one, it's going to be difficult, because you have to discount all of your costs, all of your dies, just to speak about metallurgy, on one unit, which doesn't make economic sense for any technology, not just for SMRs. So we have to look a little bit at the generic problem. You have a new technology, you want to implement it, so you have to think about, how do you place a large order? How do you ensure a large order book? That's how it has been done for cars. I think electric cars are being tackled in the exact same manner. So you have gigafactories, and they've started with the premium models, and then they went to the lower echelons as well. So just to take Tesla, we had Model S, which was very expensive, more than $100,000 per unit. Model X as well. And then they suddenly went to Model 3, so very high volumes. Model Y, which is the best sold car in history, if I'm not mistaken. So that's one example. Then, well, the same guy does SpaceX with a very large rocket, and then this being built in very high volume. The same applies to this. So he's using the largest possible rocket in the largest possible plant in the largest volume possible in order to reduce the costs and actually make it feasible. Was it, did they compute the economic feasibility on the very first rocket that blew up last year? I don't think so. So what I'm edging towards here is that we need to look at a plan for the nth of a kind, and perhaps draw an average on the costs. So at least that's my own way of looking at this. And it is my understanding that we can reach a decent number after we get an order book of about 10 to 20 plants of a given SMR. And of course, government incentives and support and public-private partnerships will help this process go along. Now, let's see. Natalia, this is why I've asked you the question. I wanted to prepare the terrain for this one. So, in Europe, we have a number of designs which already are building their order book. For GE Hitachi, Poland seems to be quite serious about it. And they also have orders outside of Europe. We know Canada is building GE Hitachi SMRs. They are making progress with their first one. And as far as my knowledge goes, they will have 3. So there are 3 planned, one right next to the other in Darlington. In Europe, however, if the data in Poland is correct, yeah, it should be. There are already 26 units planned. So that brings us pretty much in the, well, past the 20 plant limit. So at least in theory, it should be okay. Now, I'm saying in theory because this is a nuclear project, and it has added complexities to all of the examples I gave. So when you have cars or even rockets, if they blow up, it's not a problem. So you don't have to get them right first time. Even if an AI-driven car is going to get you a lot of press, nothing hits like a problem with a nuclear reactor. So that's why with nuclear reactors, you have to do it right first time, which adds time, adds money, adds complexity. Now, new scale, I had the number 7 there, and I suppose that with the latest intelligence from Natalia, we should cross out the Polish projects, which brings them to about 5, but that's in Europe. So allegedly, they do have 2 very large projects. So on the 12, for the plants with 12 reactors, they should have 2 units of those in the US. South Korea is looking at one of these projects as well, and Indonesia is doing that as well. So with that, they should be approaching about 10 plants equivalent to what we are planning to build. So there is a little bit of work to be done there. And somehow you have, it's a chicken and egg problem, you see. You have to convince people it's cheap enough to get their order, and you have to get the order to make it cheap enough. So it's a balancing act, which places them on the 2nd place in terms of order book. Now, everyone else is in a different class. They don't have enough orders or enough interest, and you'll see later on that that is also because of the maturity of the project. Now, these are the KPI, which I could have aligned better. And this is the progress they've made. So in terms of licenses, just know that the scales for everything are from 1 to 6. And just by knowing that, which is all explained here, you can see that you have 2 or maybe 3 classes of maturity. Now, GE Hitachi has a 5 in terms of financing, so I think that means a FOAC approved, yeah. And you can see 3s on licensing and 4s throughout with a 5 on financing for GEH. Now, to compensate that 5 there, NuScale has already been through the licensing process once for their 50 megawatts electric reactor. Yeah. And of course, that makes it somewhat easier to get the second one. I'm trying to make a mind connection to Mr. Sherbănescu on the back. See whether that's true. Now, moving on, you can already see that
we have a NuScale FOAC, but it will be also, it will be not a Romanian NuScale FOAC. It will be a United States FOAC, and not all the plant will be a FOAC, only the first module. So we'll test the first module, which will be actually the FOAC. We'll complete the testing after 18 months, full operation for the fuel. Then we'll proceed with the others, which will be not the FOAC.
Okay, so if we do have a pioneering spirit in these people, so I think that should be fine. And if I understood correctly, you have to take a lot of precautions there and safety measures for 18 full months before you push the project further. So all that means is that we're taking even more measures to make everything safe for the public. Now, so you have your first class of projects here with NuScale and GEH, and then you have Rolls-Royce and EDF coming from right after them, but they are somewhat behind in terms of licensing and siting. Well, in terms of licensing, as long as you haven't submitted the license, I didn't see fit to even put it on the legend. So, so this is pretty much how the progress of the projects looks like. It's really a game between GH and NuScale currently. I mean, that's obviously taking out China and Russia. And while it is not in this table, I have been to South Korea recently, and they are very, very keen on designing and exporting their own technology. So I would imagine that given this is a race, they are very keen to push their projects, and we might get to a point where if any of the projects here lag for any reason, they might come up and make the table. Well, for our project, I believe we have already discussed quite a bit about it. I will only offer some clarifications. Of course, it has a lot of safety features embedded in it. And just to mention the very important 3 main containments, you have on top of the reactor, which I believe we had thereabout, you have, of course, the reactor vessel that is encased in a larger shell, which is the containment vessel. At the same time, you then have the reactor pool, which I believe Mr. Sherbănescu already mentioned, that offers, in case of any sort of an event, a lot of time for a reaction. So while the other designs offer you about a week to do something about it, we have closer to 1 month. And if I'm not mistaken, if you somehow manage to add water, that should be prolonged.
If you add a pump, which we intend to do, just for any case, then you can be safe forever.
Okay, so I thought that to be an interesting fact to convey. So you have 1 month guaranteed safety no matter what. And then if you happen to have a source of water nearby, which we do, you can extend that period indefinitely. which is a very good thing to have. So that should anything happen with the fuel and the reactor itself. In terms of actual physical protection, you also have the reactor building, which is made to a nuclear standard. So we'll need very good welders for that, and hopefully some Romanian manufacturing as well. The plant life has already been discussed, and we do have operational flexibility, according to my understanding, between 10 and 100%. Now, if we were to speak with the people planning the grid, I am still of the opinion that ideally nuclear should stay at the point where it is most efficient. And we can do some movements, but ideally balancing should be and could be made with something else. Unless we want to invest in fuel that can withstand those sorts of movements. But that's a different discussion for some other time. Now, in terms of safety, these are just the big ones. Of course, you have pellets that can withstand accidents. And as you build the fuel assembly, that has been thought out on how to provide extra safety as well. So it's really way better in every single way than the past generation. An interesting fact, just looking at the second generation, 3+ and 4th generations, is just how much energy they can draw out from the uranium that you feed into them. So if the numbers are, I think the unit of measure was gigawatt day per ton. So basically how many gigawatts you get out in a day from 1 ton of uranium. It was below 10, I believe, for CANDU. SMRs tend to be somewhere in the ballpark of 50, 60. And we're going past 100 and edging on 200 with Gen 4s. So that's to convey an idea of the efficiency and power these will have, while at the same time managing to reduce the amount of waste they produce. I don't recall the exact numbers there, but there is a reduction, which is only bound to help. Well, this is where the invitation for a regional discussion could help. So, of course, if we are to pioneer in this area, it makes even more sense from an economic standpoint when you don't just optimize at the level of a plant. So every dollar spent in nuclear produces about $4 in GDP, and not many other options can compete with this. So as a country, well, as an operator, it's one thing for you to build nuclear, but as a country, you may see many, many more advantages. So as soon as you can go into operating and training, or perhaps starting maintaining or even producing parts for nuclear facilities, it's a different game with different economics. So yeah, it's great to reach economic feasibility at plant level, but if you can then add all of these things after it, then I think that's a winning recipe, regardless of how we call the technology. So we're hoping to make as much as possible out of these opportunities. And if we can talk with our friends and perhaps cooperate on that, the more the merrier. I had some secret sauce there, but that's only if you ask the right questions.
We haven't decided yet, but let's give Bogdan a round of applause. Do we have questions? But please make it quick because we have 2 more.
Yes, very short. All these SMRs have to be repaired. In the 21st century, we are going to need underwater robots, underwater inspection, in-service inspection, specialized staff, specialized INC to work underwater for long periods of time. These are common for all the SMRs. We are going to need experience in research and design of water reactors, no matter whether small or big. So that's the way where we can start talking about cooperation.
I'm very happy to confirm that the Ministry of Energy has, if I'm not mistaken, a call of projects ongoing for startups to take any sort of challenge from any of the companies that the ministry has in its portfolio. So perhaps we can discuss about this. I've conveyed this idea to them, and then that the need exists. But perhaps we can make a more persuasive case if we put a number right next to the idea. It doesn't have to be a large one to start it up. So all I'm saying is the playing field exists, and we can start work on these ideas.
I don't want necessarily to force a comparison on you, but what do you think are the most interesting novelty and innovative passive safety features from what you have seen, because you two have been looking at different reactor designs and engineering proposals. Just what's, in your opinion, something that's we didn't have before and we have now?
Let me get my guns out. Okay. So, like any large industrial product, you get a given design. You have a very large number of variables, and you have to fit that in to a product that seems somewhat perfect, and functional, and it looks right. It's like mathematics. It has to be beautiful in order for it to be correct. So, from that standpoint, if you look at the drawing, both the new scale design and GEH, I'm not so very sure about Westinghouse, but those two for sure seem quite right. So they have that stable position, the inherent stability that you were talking about. So no matter what happens, they fall with their feet on the ground, meaning that whatever you have happening, they are able to cool themselves down and keep the population safe. I think that's as far as I would go with it. Initially, you would need pumps, which meant that you have to put redundancies, and the pumps could fail as well. And there was no real way, should those go bad, to prevent the ongoing problems that would occur from that. I don't want to say them, but you get the point. So it's this passive safety is really the innovation in the fact that the reactor can cool itself down. And as we've already mentioned twice before, you have a very long period in which to react because of that. So it's not a problem of something went wrong, we have to do something in 24 hours or else. It's not like that anymore.
It buys you time.
A lot of it.
That has to be in operation in order to keep it running, your system. That's one type of passiveness. The other type of passiveness is that one which is embedded in the way the thermohydraulic things are operating, neutronics are operating. They are embedded in the way, the heat transfer in the water is done by thermocycling, things like that. For the first part, solution is simple. Not to get the pump and not to get anything that will have to rotate or to be actuated by electricity. For the second part, what you need is knowledge. You need a research institute that actually already calculated the way the phenomena are combining so that by their own behavior will protect your device. And that is something which is going on now. In Kiev, research institutes, they are doing that now.
Thank you for your input. Bogdan, if you have anything to add.
Now, as long as we remember that we're doing the right thing in this arena and that we have indefinite time to react should anything bad happen.
I like that, indefinite time to react. Thank you so very much for your presentation and your answers. Mr. Chirica, yes.
Thank you very much for giving me the possibility to express worry I have. I'm speaking in the name of industry, not in the name of nuclear. Yeah? So we are complaining that we are very happy that we have a national participation and national supply chain. But the question I put to the lady from Poland was not like that, because we need to persuade the politicians to provide more support to the industry. And that is not a discussion I discussed with some colleagues, knowing some international context better. Is a large part of the industry which is participating to the nuclear is also the industry that can do the defense. So maybe a campaign to consider the nuclear supply chain and the nuclear industry as is treated the defense, because energy at all is something that is providing security, is very well connected with the independence of a country. So that is something that we have to consider for the future. I have the chance to work 4 years for a British company. At that time, I learned a lot regarding the deals there are between the industry and the UK government regarding the support they are providing to. I can send you the brochure. So the support they can provide to the industry. It was maybe after changing the regime from the communist to capitalism, let's say. It was in a certain politicians, the idea is we don't care about the private, it's their problem, they have to solve their problem. Look to France, look to UK. They don't let industries which are crucial disappear. We lost Doosan, his former IMGB. Now we are losing some. I don't want to be very specific, but I know that it's another company that is going out, and nobody is saying nothing. That is very important to persuade the politicians that also they have to take an eye on the private industry, because they bring taxes, they offer jobs, and there are a part to the independence of the country.
We are indeed in this race, and we see that Russia and China, who are working through state-owned companies, are winning this race, and the collective West has to catch up if we want to be in this business. And we see that in Russia and China, so state-owned companies that are supported by the government of the respective countries, in the US and in Canada and in France, we see indeed, and in the UK, this approach that we have to support the industry. We cannot let the industry do it alone. That's why the grants, to help. That's why the partnership, 50-50 partnership in the US to build the first of a kind model, so the Terra Power and the X Energy Model 1. So yes, the serious countries are having that approach, absolutely. And I liked very much the approach of Canada, because they said we want to be first movers. We want, and they say in their strategy, Canada is a tier 1 nuclear country. What is tier 1? That means not only country that has, civilian, nuclear power plants, but also a country that does research, that has an educational infrastructure, so has all the adjacent industry, horizontal industry, to support this being not only a domestic business or industry, but also international, going global, selling some of these designs and models also in the international market and competing there. Romania is not there yet, but that doesn't mean that we don't have to muster somehow, convince the government this is an industry that must be supported. Otherwise, I mean, there are industries that can do without government support, but this one is not one of them. It needs government support behind it. Well, do you want to add?
And for anyone who thinks this is not in any way capitalist, just look at the Inflation Act for one. And the second clarification would be that capitalism is when you have 20 plus players, you let some of them die so that the most efficient ones win, not when you have one strategic enterprise and you let that one go down. That's not how you do it.
It's not capitalism. You're right. Well, this round of applause goes to all of our panelists, but we have two more interventions, two more videos, short ones, yes, but good ones. So it will make your worthwhile, and they will shed more light on Canada. So how the Canadians think about this. So if I talked about the SMR strategy, these two will be more about the projects, the specific projects. So bear with us for a little bit more.
Hi, my name is Brian Fehrenbach with the Organization of Canadian Nuclear Industries. It's my pleasure to join you today from Canada at the Romanian Energy Center's Mini But Mighty Unleashing the Potential of SMR seminar. I'm going to give you an overview of the Canadian SMR projects. But first, let me say a few words about OCNI. Our main purpose is to create connections between companies, utilities, governments, and other players in the nuclear industry. We want to increase the capability of our members to be strong in the nuclear industry in Canada and around the world. We exercise a global reach through our trade missions. Many of you have seen us in Romania or have even come to Canada on a CanExport funded OCNI trade mission. I'm not certain if John or Louisa or Victor or Marcel are there today, but I've met many of you through this program. And finally, we advocate for more nuclear energy projects in Canada and around the world. So how is it that Canada is leading the world in the deployment of SMRs? Well, we have to look at a few different factors. First, we already have a good mix of clean energy, whether or not from hydroelectricity or nuclear energy across the province, reflected here on an 8-year average. So we did need big changes in order to implement a cleaner electricity mix. In addition, when you look at the jurisdictions in Canada and the prices that people are paying, those who are in remote locations with diesel power flown in by airplane are paying much, much more for electricity than those at the bottom of the graph who already have nuclear energy or hydroelectricity. And so this again makes sense for targeted deployment of SMRs in different situations. Finally, Ontario had made the decision in 2005 to phase out coal because we were suffering from smog days. And so you can see in 2022, approximately half of our electricity was generated by nuclear energy. So all of this led to the right recipe for the Canadian SMR action plan and strategy developed by governments and industry together. And it gave everybody through the roadmap actions to focus on while we work together in readying and deploying SMRs. OCNI was tasked with developing a pan-Canadian supply chain, promoting advanced manufacturing methods, and promoting SMR workforce diversity and Indigenous engagement. And so in the last 2 years, we've launched our Ready for SMR program in New Brunswick, in Saskatchewan, and just this month, we're initiating a national program under NRCan's Enabling SMR Fund. So we're really pleased to be helping Canada ready itself for nuclear by increasing the number of suppliers in the nuclear supply chain. We do this primarily by looking at other industries, companies that make valves or pumps, companies that work with steel or perform inspections in other industries. We look at their quality assurance programs, we look at their safety records, and we help them migrate their program into the nuclear industry. One of the benefits, or one of the anticipated benefits of SMRs, is that their construction will allow for fewer nuclear components, therefore fewer components requiring the nuclear quality assurance and quality management systems, and more components in the balance of plant or non-nuclear side that can be supplied with non-nuclear quality assurance programs. I know many projects in Europe have the balance of plant components supplied under an ISO quality management program, which would be great if Canada could adopt as well. So let's take a look at what's happening in Canada. Everybody knows about OPG's project to deploy GE Hitachi BWRX 300 at the Darlington site. This was the unanimous choice by Canadians to go first because of the technology readiness of the BWRX 300 and because of OPG's site already being licensed in a technology neutral manner to hold much more than 300 megawatts. And so now OPG need only do a gap assessment for the regulator on the proving that the technology specific to the GE Hitachi BWRX fits within the boundaries of their existing license to operate. On the East Coast, New Brunswick is embarking on a project to deploy the ARC Clean Energy 100 Advanced SMR at the Point Lepreau site. They have a license app to prepare site application into the regulator now. And New Brunswick Power is also working with Moltex Clean Energy to develop an SMR that incorporates spent CANDU fuel. So for a province of fewer than 1 million people to work on 2 advanced SMR projects, I think is fantastic. In the West, Saskatchewan is embarking on 2 nuclear projects with an intention to deploy GE Hitachi BWX 300s somewhere in Saskatchewan. They will announce a site later this year, as well as the Saskatchewan Research Council's intention to work with Westinghouse Canada for an eVinci microreactor that I think is a fantastic piece of technology that can be deployed anywhere in the world in 3 shipping canisters. Now, of course, Alberta is engaged in the nuclear energy conversation, and that may be the first sighting of an industrial sited SMR in Canada, as many of Alberta's petrochemical and oil companies are looking to SMRs for their advantages with high temperature steam or high temperature applications, as well as making their overall applications greener. So there's a lot underway in Canada right now, and we expect some more projects to be announced in the near future. But recently, we've learned, partly through this study that suggested a necessary increase of about 9,000 megawatts of electricity, is something that we cannot achieve just with SMRs. So our nuclear operators, Bruce Power and OPG, are now or soon considering siting and technology choices for large nuclear as well. So all of this comes together into a situation where an already at-risk supply chain for keeping up with SMR demand will be further stretched by any requests to deploy large nuclear as well. And our country is working hard to get ready for both of those opportunities. In terms of fuel, Canada has relied mostly on natural uranium for the CANDU reactors, and now we're looking at different types of small and large nuclear requiring different types of fuel. This is a risk for us. It's something that we're working through, and again, it's one of the reasons why GE Hitachi's BWRX 300 was selected to go first, because of a readily available existing fuel supply. Canada has one SMR company, Terrestrial Energy, that makes use of natural uranium natural uranium, but lightly enriched uranium that's easily able to be procured today as well. Some of the risks, however, that remain are, of course, industry, private equity financing for SMRs as industry looks to deploy them at industrial applications. I've already mentioned the regulatory and environmental impact process is something that's a risk everywhere in the world because companies and markets just can't wait 5 or longer years in order to get approval to proceed with their projects. We have to reduce this into a 5-year window. Labor and workforce readiness is another risk, and in Canada, Indigenous engagement continues to be a top priority. There will be no nuclear without First Nations in Canada. Finally, last thing I'm going to say, save the date, September 2025, Canada has been selected to host the 14th International Conference on Tritium. Many of you know the 13th Annual Conference on Tritium was hosted recently in Romania. It was very successful, so I invite everybody to come to Canada next September and join us at that. Thank you very much for your time. It's been my pleasure speaking to you today. Hello to Raluca and Heather and the organizers, and I hope to see everybody soon. Have a good day.
Well, that was Brian's presentation, and even if he's not here, we cannot ask him questions. We can all applaud him at least. Yes, we have a question over there.
So, Raluca Tudor-Petru from the Embassy of Canada. If you have questions for Brian, you can come to me and ask them, and then I'll get Brian to answer them.
So
thank you.
there is a way we can
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Thank you.
get the questions to him and receive some answers. That's good to know. Thank you. Okay, we're almost at the end of our panel, but we have one more, and bear with me because I promise you this is definitely a one unconventional presentation, and it will probably all put us in the mood of wanting to move to Canada.
Hello, I'm John Gorman, the President and CEO of the Canadian Nuclear Association. I'm very grateful to ROEC and ROMADAM, European Commission, and of course our own Canadian government for the opportunity to address you this morning and share a few insights with you about Canada's activity with small modular reactors, the uses that we're putting them to, and to explore a little bit of the opportunity that Romania is pursuing right now in exploring the use of small modular reactors in its country. So perhaps I'll just start by speaking a little bit about the state of SMR technology in Canada. I think it's well known that Canada is a first mover and a leader with small modular reactor technologies in the Western world. And we have several projects that demonstrate that leadership. You've been exploring a number of them, no doubt. I'm thinking of the General Electric Hitachi modules, which are being rolled out at our existing Darlington site in Ontario. There are 4 units being constructed here, and the first one will be connected to the electricity grid and producing electricity in 2029 or even late 2028. And I believe that makes it the targeted to be the first small modular reactor that's producing electricity onto the grid in the Western world. So that's quite an accomplishment. And we have several other orders on the book for the GE Hitachi here in Canada, at least 4 more units that are slated to go in the province of Saskatchewan. We also have a smaller reactor, a micro reactor, the Westinghouse eVinci. I believe it's about a 5 megawatt unit, which is being deployed in Saskatchewan with the Saskatchewan Research Council. And of course, the eVinci is owned by Westinghouse, which is now been acquired by 2 very prominent Canadian companies. So Westinghouse is actually owned by Cameco, which is the 2nd largest exporter of uranium in the world, based here in Saskatchewan. and Brookfield, which is an investment and financing firm, one of the largest in the world. So you can see that in addition to this very long history that we have, and a shared history that Canada has with Romania with the CANDO technology, we are now building on that base of technology and operation and regulation to be first movers in small modular reactors, and it's spurring other activities like this investment into Westinghouse. We have other technologies that are homegrown being developed here and slated for deployment in Canada, especially in Eastern Canada. So we've spoken about Central Ontario and Western Saskatchewan, but New Brunswick has two technologies, ARC, which is a molten salt related technology that is being developed in New Brunswick, and they have projects planned with the province, and also Moltex, another molten salt technology, which has some unique attributes for being able to reuse spent fuel. So across the country, we have different technologies being deployed that serve different purposes. And I guess I'll speak about that a little bit later. But of course, the Avinci is the micro-reactor. When you move to ARC and Moltex, they're sort of a medium-sized reactor and produce high-temperature industrial heat. And then, of course, you've got the GE Hitachi, which is 300 megawatts and is more of an electric application at this time in Ontario and Saskatchewan. So part of Canada's strategic approach here has been to focus on different technologies that have different uses. And I wanted to speak a little bit about the uses in Canada before talking about what I think some of the elements to our success have been. In the national context here in Canada, our electricity grid is already quite carbon-free, except for certain pockets. So if you look nationally at our electricity grid, I think it's about 84% non-emitting electricity generation. However, there are certain regions within the country, provinces, which are still very reliant on fossil fuels. Coal-fired electricity, which is being phased out, and quite a bit of gas-fired electricity in some of these regions. So our challenge in Canada is not the same as many other nations in that we only have select pockets of electricity that needs to be shifted from fossil fuel to clean nuclear power. However, in those pockets, we see a great use of small modular reactors to replace existing coal plants or even sit on existing natural gas-fired facilities when they phase out. And I'm sure that's of interest to Romania. The micro-reactors in the Canadian context, they have the prospect of powering some of our industrial applications, whether it's mining or even working with our northern communities to replace diesel-fired electricity with micro-reactors. And since we're such a large nation, these can be very handy. And then, of course, we have the larger General Electric SMRs, which are being used to produce larger amounts of electricity. And that's going to be very handy to Canada in terms of being scalable, placed where we need them, but also helping us double or triple the amount of electricity we produce, which is what we need. Now, what about the success of Canada in terms of being a world leader with small modular reactors? I'd say a few things here. One is we have a regulator, which Romania is very familiar with, the CNSC, who has a very strong history in terms of its regulation of the CANDO technology. And we've been able to use that very strong regulator to analyze and move quickly through the selection process for new types of technology. Secondly, we've relied quite heavily on our established utilities to demonstrate leadership. In Ontario, that really comes down to Ontario Power Generation, which is a close working partner with Romania, as well as other Crown utilities in other provinces. They've been able to drive the commitment to small modular reactor technology, and they've been able to use existing rate structures to be able to accelerate that deployment. We've also relied very heavily on our relationships with the laboratories, the nuclear laboratories that we have here in Canada, whether it's Canadian Nuclear Laboratories or, in the case of Evinci, the Saskatchewan Research Council. Lastly, I'd say our ability to move quickly with small modular reactors has been accomplished through this extraordinary collaborative relationship between our federal government and certain provincial governments. And that collaboration has enabled the quick investment and the beginnings of deployment here of small modular reactors. Now for Romania, I would suggest that a key element for your own success in exploring small modular reactors is to rely on partners. I've already spoken to the very proud and close working relationship that our nations have established because of that can-do technology, and the existing partnership that is being executed now with the refurbishment of Cernavodă and the examination of building new can-do reactors in Romania. So let's call on that strong partnership, that collaborative relationship, so that we can see Romania achieve with its very ambitious agenda of using nuclear technology for energy independence, energy security, and of course, low carbon future that's going to be helping not only your electricity needs, but also the needs of your heavy industry as we move into this new economy. So best of luck, and thank you for the opportunity to address you today.
That was Mr. John Gorman, President of the Canadian Nuclear Association. And not only that, he spoke to us about SMRs, he also gave us a walk through a Canadian forest. So I wanted to thank the Embassy of Canada specifically and Mrs. Raluca Petcu for facilitating these last two interventions, as well as all our panels today, the Embassy of Ukraine and Artem Wojtechin, the Embassy of Poland and Natalia Petrovska, as well as Bogdan, who is no longer with us. I hope you have enjoyed our content today. Instead of a conclusion, because we are, at the end of our event, it's up to you, Mr. Chirică, to say a few words, to draw some conclusion to all that we have discussed.
Thank you very much for inviting me for the final conclusions. In my opinion, it was a great day. There are a lot of information that were exchanged. And what I appreciate very much, and also Eugenia noticed that so many questions and discussions is not something happening very often, which is very good. And I'm leaving this meeting with high satisfaction, and I'm feeling very, very good after this discussion. So I hope that the next will be better than this one. Thank you.
I wanted to say for a last word that I thank everyone for coming. Of course, I thank our supporters, Nuclear Electrica and the Canadian nuclear partners, and I thank Romatom for this first partnership, and I'm hopeful that we will have a third and maybe a second and third event, because it's fun. It's fun to organize, and for me, including, it was an educational event, and I treated this event as a learning opportunity in which we learn from each other, because this is a topic that's cutting edge. We still don't know many things about it. So I hope you have enjoyed it, and we still have some tea prepared for farewell, so don't leave just yet. Take a while and enjoy some of the refreshments that we have prepared for you. Thank you.